With the new God of War game coming out recently, I feel like this couldn't really be timed better with all the Greek themes going on throughout this album. Welcome to Vanity Does Music, where we're taking a look into Alesana's full-length studio album debut on Frail Wings of Vanity and Wax. This is the second video in a row in a 5-video series, as per request by my friend Ashley Perrin, where essentially what I'm doing is taking a look at the entire mainline Alesana discography. Keep an eye on the channel for this review and many others throughout the series. I should leave a link down in the description to another review, possibly the one I did for Try This With Your Eyes Closed. Not entirely sure yet, because I'm way too fucking forgetful to even plan that type of shit out. This album touches on a lot of Greek concepts and ideas, as the band was noted to be fans of concept albums throughout their career as they were writing the music for their first album. So the eventual road to writing a concept album, even although this one is very loosely based on an idea as opposed to their next album in their discography, The Emptiness, it still very much has elements of these ideas and trying to communicate a story throughout their songs. The song, to the best of my knowledge, has significance to Greek culture, whether it references a god, a monster, or just an event in general. Even the album title itself, On Frail Wings of Vanity and Wax, is a reference to Icarus, who flew too close to the sun out of pride and seeking a sort of, I forget the story exactly, but it was essentially he wanted to fly to the sun out of pure curiosity, and unfortunately he got burnt up in that moment. The first track that I really feel jumped out at me was Pathetic Ordinary, as it seems to be all the good elements of their debut EP, with all the cringy and overdone stereotypical elements stripped away. It has the song progression of a track very much rooted in post-hardcore and screamo, and manages to get across the emotion without trying too much for a gimmick or trying to use lyrics that just borderline on something you see on a Hot Topic shirt as a crutch, which is very good because as much as I enjoyed their debut EP, it was very much a case of let's try being as edgy as possible and just trying to get as big of an audience as we can with that shock value, which I wasn't really a fan of for when it comes to that album. Right after in the album order, Alchemy Sounded Good at the Time has the same qualities from the track before, but also leaves hints of what will really be defined as the future sound of the band. Try This With Your Eyes Closed was as much a debut EP as it was sort of a demo for their song taste, and then when you get into this album, there's hints here and there of what was and what's going to be. You'll see what I mean if you were to sit down and listen to their first 3 albums just in a row. You get this sense of progression and maturity, and most importantly, evolution throughout their music. And once again, On Frail Wings of Vanity and Wax is a look into what their future sound will be, both for conceptual pieces and for just overall lyrical production. Dennis Lee and Mike Sean, I believe those are their names. I'm having like a bit of a lapse of judgment here. They very much have a talent for communicating emotion, but sometimes the lyrics that they write don't necessarily have as much impact as they try to communicate when they're singing, such as in the song, once again, Alchemy Sounded Good at the Time. It's not a carbon copy of a song off of albums like Confessions, but it's a subtle step forward and a rare move that I don't see a whole lot of artists do, which I imagine the reason for that is because, I mean, you can't really plan these sorts of things out unless you have a very definite concept moving forward. And to the best of my knowledge, no real future plans were laid out besides the eventual writing of an original concept with The Emptiness. That was a very interesting move on the part of Alesana. As I speak on the maturation, I think that's the word, just the overall maturity influx from Try This With Your Eyes Closed, there are still some elements in this album that they feel a little cringy. Again, I hate using that word. Almost makes me cringe just saying the actual word, descriptive, but there are some lines, like, I'm just going to pick one out here that I wrote down. Lines like, eyes open to splattered blood, cold tile mocks me as I find the knife still on my back. It sounds fresh at the first listen, but it's really just revisiting the tired trope of betrayal from a friend, which it can be delivered and done very well in songs like, for a more modern example, True Friends by Bring the Horizon. But here it just feels like, again, they're grasping at straws, trying to produce not so much shock value at this point, but just trying to make you think way too much for a line that shouldn't be taken as seriously as they're trying to communicate here. That can be a good lyrical idea to touch on. It's been so tired out within the genre and just music in general that it's not a total flop, because there is solid instrumentation behind from Patrick Thompson and crew, but it does prevent the track from sounding any better than what could have been. Speaking back on the instrumentation here, Jeremy Bryan is a definite strong point for that song and just a lot of songs on the album overall. He doesn't really have a whole bunch of shining moments as opposed to like a vocalist would, but there are definite times within the album's runtime where I stopped and thought, wow, that's a better piece than what came from before. He's sort of all over the place for this album, which is very odd considering for most of Alesana's discography, especially within this own album, the song consistency is very fluid from member to member. But with him, he feels like he has a strong days and then he has a lot of off days, which is very interesting. Dennis Lee and Shawn Mike have a much better time with chemistry on this album than their debut, with it's a lot more time where they give each other long stretches and verses to actually build up their own momentum instead of constantly throwing it back and forth or doing the technique where the rough vocalist is in the background sort of repeating in unison the same words, which I do admire that technique, but it is good to also have definite verses and or choruses dedicated to one of the singers. But they also do have a couple moments here where they sing, again, very back and forth. That chemistry really works out in songs such as Apology, which is a remastered track, but I don't really want to touch on the remastered tracks because that came from, an album I did before, so I feel like I'd just be reiterating what I said, but that is a very good example of the chemistry that I'm speaking on here. Lyrics overall on this album speak volumes to how a band can grow in such a short time, with Siren's soliloquy being struck right in the middle of a 3-song length of pure post-hardcore greatness. I do have to say that when I went into On Frail Wings, I figured it'd be the usual debut album mishap, sort of like my feelings towards Dance Gavin Dance, where I fully enjoyed Whatever I Say Is Royal Ocean, but going into Downtown Battle Mountain, I was very underwhelmed, but I was actually really surprised here to see that they did well, and I enjoyed the album for its quality, and admire it for its focus on switching up from clean to rough vocals, as opposed to what felt like from rough to clean album vocals, where on the last release it seemed very focused on Dennis Lee making his mark. So it's good to see the switch up here. And again, while the instruments are very solid and the vocal delivery is good, there are just a lot of times here where I find myself just sort of laughing at the lyrics, or just the ideas that are being selected. So with that said, I'm going to cap off this review here with a 7.3 out of 10. And that brings us to the end of the video. What do you guys think? Do you like it? Do you agree with what I said? Do you disagree? Do you want to throw an entire late 2000s emo record at my face for dare blaspheming the name of Alesana? Let me know down in the comments, and don't forget to like, dislike, subscribe, unsubscribe, share it, tweet it, Instagram it, tout it, and don't forget to stay safe, everyone. I'll see you in the next video.